Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Triangulation is brought to you by Cashfly at CACHEFLY.com. This is Triangulation, episode 225, recorded Monday, November 16th, 2015. Larry Wall. Triangulation is brought to you by Igloo Software. Igloo is an intranet you'll actually like. Use blogs, calendars, file sharing, forums, task management, and wikis to work better together with your teams. Sign up now and try it for free at igloosoftware.com/twit. And by Wealthfront. Wealthfront is a low-cost, automated investment service that is the most sophisticated way for you to invest your money. Whether you've got millions or you're just starting out, visit wealthfront.com/triangulation to sign up and get your free personalized investment portfolio. That's wealthfront.com/triangulation. And by Epson's new EcoTank printers. With Epson's line of Super Tank all-in-one printers, you can print thousands of documents without running out of ink. EcoTank is loaded and ready to print when you are. Visit epson.com/ecotank to find out more. It's time for Triangulation, the show where we get together with some of the best minds in technology and spend an hour talking and involve you, the audience, through the chat room. That's why it's a triangle. It's me, our guest, and you. And I'm glad you're here today, especially if you, like me, are a collector of programming languages, if you love programming, if you love coding. We have a legend with us today. Larry Wall is the creator of Perl, the benevolent dictator for life at the Perl Project.
I don't want to be a legend yet.
Oh, too early, huh?
Yeah,
too young to be a legend.
Yeah, I'm only 61.
I'm sorry to say, Mr. Wall, you are a legend, and it's not a bad thing. It's really not a bad thing.
I live about a quarter mile from the History Museum, the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, and I try to stay out of there.
Yeah.
I don't want to be history
You
yet.
don't want to be history yet. Yeah, they'll stuff you and put you up on the, on the wall there. Perl 6 coming out. Actually, it's in beta already, and that's big news because it's been, dare I say, 15 years in the making. That's longer than the original Perl, I would imagine.
Well, it depends on how you count, but yeah.
Yeah. We'll get to Perl 6. I want to talk a little bit about you too, though. We have, as I mentioned before we began the show, a broad variety of viewers, some who are expert Perl users, and they'll have the expert questions for you, not me. But I think a lot of us are also very interested in you and in... So tell me a little bit about your start. Were you a computer science major in college?
No, I actually started off majoring in, a double major in chemistry and music.
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect.
And majored in a few other things in the middle. I'm one of these people who stretched 4 years into 8.
Yeah. Well, we're from that great generation that brought us so much innovation. But
I was fortunate to go to a college that let me.
That's nice.
Let me kind of figure I was a late bloomer. So.
Do you remember your first personal computer? Well, of course you do. Everybody does.
Well, my first personal computer was actually an Amiga because all the computers I had before that were at work.
Big ones.
And they were. Well, PDP-11, if you count that as big. Yeah. VAXs and such. They were always much more powerful than you could get on the desk. So, we waited until our kids came along and they needed something, so we got an Amiga 1000.
Amiga, yeah.
I still have it.
Do you?
Yeah.
You ever boot it up?
Haven't for a few years.
Yeah. We have one. I think the one we have is it a 4000? We have one in the basement. Yeah. We trot it out every once in a while. We had it up here on Saturday. We were interviewing a guy who's still selling floppy disks. And so we brought everything up in the basement that still supported floppy disks, including an Osborne 1, an Amiga.
There's a bunch of those in the Computer History Museum.
Yeah, too. Yeah. I have one of my own downstairs. Unfortunately, it's my history. So when you did you stay in music and chemistry, or did you get interested in computers at some point?
I got interested in classical Greek, Koine Greek. For a while I was pre-med major, but probably not because I really wanted to be a doctor. I just wanted to take a whole bunch of different sciences.
Yeah, see, that's what I did.
Not just chemistry.
I was a Chinese major. I was interested in stuff, right?
Yeah,
it wasn't
I've always had the problem of being interested in too many things, and but eventually I while I was stretching out my college career, I was working full-time and taking one course a quarter, and met my wife, and we got both interested in linguistics.
I love linguistics.
We're planning to be field linguists in Africa, and so we were studying with a professional linguistic organization that also works with a missionary organization. We were going to go out and be Bible translators. So I learned a lot about languages. I had to create my own major, however, because the linguistics major at our college required 2 foreign languages. So I had all the basic courses and one language, which was Greek. And I persuaded them to substitute a smattering of computer languages for the other language requirement. And my major was called Natural and Artificial Languages.
Very
And I
interesting.
thought I was doing it just to get out of school. It turned out to be quite a prediction of what my future career was going to be.
Yeah.
I didn't know it at the time, though.
Do linguists consider computer languages kind of languages, human languages?
Most of them don't. You know, they think both the linguists and the computer scientists tend to think of computer languages more as a mathematical sort of construct.
A formal description of a problem and solution.
And I felt it was my specialty to be able to take some of the ideas from how a natural language works and apply them to computer languages.
There are nouns, there are verbs.
Yeah,
right?
yes, but not so much on a surface level. People think, well, you could just make English like COBOL, but that's a very surface level of how a human language works. The deeper ways in which we use metaphors and things that are similar to each other, take this and use it as that, and let them kind of interplay in a computer scientist would call it, you know, in a Dewey fashion, do what I mean.
Right.
And how do you do that without losing control of what the computer is going to do is an interesting problem.
Well, it makes sense because, after all, the human brain works in a particular way. Language is our particular facility as humans. And if you're going to try to get a machine to do something, it makes sense that whatever mechanism you use to do that is going to end up being kind of linguistic, because that's how we communicate, right?
Certainly. And a lot of people think that the purpose of a computer program is to speak to the computer.
Like a conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just as important, the communication with the other programmers around you and to your future self.
More importantly,
yes. You know, as I say, I always assume that whoever reads your code is an axe murderer with a grudge. And
one of my favorite.
And that might even be you.
One of my favorite quotes.
6 months from now.
So this was at University of California, Berkeley, as a graduate student.
As a graduate student
you met Gloria, who is here, by the way.
Well, we actually met up at Seattle Pacific University.
Oh, you met at Seattle Pacific?
Yeah.
She's going, no.
Yeah.
Seattle Pacific. But then you both went to Cal.
Yes, we did. We were both in the linguistics program there. Met some really famous linguists. George Lakoff, Charles Fillmore were some of our professors.
Do you still love linguistics? Is that still
you can't stop loving linguistics.
Yeah.
The way it often comes out, though, is my wife complains that anything she says to me, if there's any ambiguity in it whatsoever, I will misinterpret it intentionally.
Oh, thank goodness for the holes. That's really...
Well,
but that's what's interesting.
That's actually what it takes that to be a good language designer, because a lot of people think they're good language designers, but they don't see where the holes are,
right? Where
the ambiguities are and the traps that people will fall into.
And ambiguity, of course, is not what you want when you're instructing it.
Well, you
to do things.
You don't want unintentional ambiguity,
right?
Or as we say, unintentional genericity, to use a more technical term. And this is actually one of the reasons why we decided to redesign Perl starting in the year 2000, was there were some places there where it was unintentionally generic, unintentionally ambiguous. So that was part of the process. It's always a learning thing. You're never perfect on it.
Of course not.
And there is no such thing as a perfect language, because one of my favorite books is by Umberto Eco. It's called The Search for the Perfect Language. And it's not about computers. It's about all these ancient ideas of how a a perfect language should work. You know, is it Hebrew? Is it Latin? Is it some philosophical language that I can make up? You know, is it Lojban?
Right.
Esperanto?
Right.
And there's always trade-offs. The good language designers, it's funny, we all get along quite well with each other. It's our followers that tend to get into fights, because we all understand that how many trade-offs we made,
right.
And which trade-offs we made. So, ambiguity. What we've discovered, a lot of the problem is assuming that you can parse a piece of program and then go back and reparse it as some other language, you know, in
right.
in reverse, and that is how usually you end up with accidentally being in more than one language.
Right. I've heard it said that the language really conditions what you think you can do and what you can do.
Yeah, you can either have a strong or a weak Sapir-Whorf hypothesis.
Right.
I'd buy the weak one, but not the strong one. Languages don't really differ in what you can say. They differ in what they make easy.
Right.
Because applies to both human languages and computer languages. You can express pretty much any idea eventually. You might have to use a bunch of circumlocutions if your language does not support it. And you see this if you go, you know, in human languages, you know, you see the different translations of things and their different lengths, because some things just fit into other languages better. What's easy differs. What you have to say differs. So in English, we always have to be distinguishing singular from plural.
Mm-hmm. Not so much in Chinese
or Japanese.
Yeah.
You can say Honda, and you know you don't know whether that's
right.
one book or a
many.
pile of books.
Yeah.
But going the other direction, if you're going to Japanese, you have to think about all these different levels of politeness.
Right.
And they make other distinctions that we don't make. So it all comes out in the balance. We talk about what's the waterbed theory of language complexity, because your problem that you're trying to solve, whether it's communicating to a person or to a computer, has a given level of intrinsic complexity that you have to solve. So, you know, you push down if you use a really simple language like C, then it becomes a longer solution.
Right.
And vice versa. If you have a complicated language, it might be a very short, succinct solution. So there's this necessary level of complexity. What we try to do with language design is to reduce the unnecessary complexity. It's like when you're flying an airplane, you know, there's a certain amount of drag that is implicit in just pushing this amount of cross-section through the air. And then there's all this, you know, induced drag and such that you try to get rid of by streamlining. So, yeah, we're all in the business of streamlining our languages.
But you make different choices depending what you want to streamline.
Yeah, well, there are many external reasons to bend the design one way or another. There are many specialist computer languages nowadays called DSLs, usually domain-specific languages, and they're specialized for a particular ecological niche. You know, like birds, penguins, are a very special niche. And then there are a lot of birds that are like generalists, you know, like crows and mockingbirds, that just sort of get along everywhere. So there are computer languages that are like that as well. And
Perl is much more generalist.
Perl has always tended toward the generalist. It started out specializing in text processing and system administration, but you know, we long ago decided that we'd really like a language like Perl to. Well, people talk about, you know, what's a good first programming language.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, we know now it's not BASIC.
No.
Or COBOL,
you know,
or Fortran.
The Python folks would like to think
Python's not bad.
They're the best first programming language, but
Eric Raymond would say Lisp, but
we want to think of Perl more as the last programming language.
Ah, I like that. I like that.
So, you know, we want to make the on-ramps as long and as level as we can, but we're not going to compromise the expressivity and the mutability into the future of the language. in order just to make things too easy.
Tim
That's
Toady.
so yeah, there's more than one way to do it.
Yeah. We're talking to Larry Wall, the benevolent dictator for life. You didn't choose that, or did you?
Well, that's well.
That's a great name. I'll take it.
It was in the industry already. It just fit.
We're going to take a break. We're going to talk about your earliest programming, and you actually, I imagine, as most Unix programmers, C was the language of choice initially. Yeah.
Well, I learned in BASIC.
Yeah, did you?
But I switched to C when I got on Unix.
Yeah. We'll talk about that and your entries in the obfuscated C competition.
That brings back.
You won that twice.
Yeah.
That's very impressive, if you ask me, because that stuff.
In a positive or negative way.
Yeah, right. Right. We're going to talk more, and of course, you also won the first Free Software Foundation Award in 1998. So, an early and strong proponent, I'm sure, of open source and free software. But first, let's talk a little bit about my Igloo. Not my house made of snow. No, it's an intranet you'll like, which is great. If you've ever used the corporate intranet, you know there's a wide range of capabilities. But with Igloo, you got everything you want all together. It's a cloud-based, of course. Share files, you can collaborate on documents, you can update blogs. Yes, there are blogs, there are calendars, project management. It's all social, which I really like. You know, a lot of times people now are retrofitting things to give them like buttons. This has been social from day one. Comments, like buttons, drag and drop widgets, a WYSIWYG editor. It's responsive, very important too, because you're not always going to be using it on the desk at work. You're going to be using it on your smartphone and your tablet. It will look great. If you're stuck using SharePoint or you're in a business overwhelmed by tools and platforms, you're going to love the intranet that Igloo gives you. It matches your brand's look and feel. It simplifies how you work. Accessible on any device. Of course, authentication, identity, very, very well done. You've got 256-bit encryption over SSL. You've got private clouds. You've got all sorts of solutions, complete access control. And I really like this. You pay one price and you got it all. There's none of this little there, a bit here, a little bit here. Oh, you want that? Oh, you want more. Plans start as low as $3 per user per month. Volume pricing is available. Companies like Hulu and Inventive Health and American Family Insurance and Ipswich use it. Government agencies use it. It's got everything you want. That's Igloo, IGLOO, software.com/twit. And you can try it for free, of course. And when you sign up for our link, you'll get your own Igloo for up to 10 people. And by the way, this isn't a limited time trial. This is free forever. Igloo, up to 10 people. That's nice. Getting started, starting your startup, this is the place to go. igloosoftware.com/twit. Give it a try. Take a look at the website. There's lots of great stuff there. And I think it's the kind of thing a business really needs. Communication is so important. Igloo makes it easy. IGLOO software.com/twit. Larry Wall is our guest. I probably shouldn't have to say anything else. Creator of Perl, legend, not just for creating Perl, but for your wit, your dry humor. You've heard a little bit of it already.
Sometimes it's kind of wet.
Wet humor, dry humor. You wrote RN, early Usenet reader.
Yes.
Very handy. Patch.
Yeah.
This is, I think, a great way for a lot of the early guys. This is what you wrote. You wrote tools because you needed tools, right?
Yep.
And they weren't there.
That's correct. Or there were tools there, but we thought we could do better.
You can do better. And those were probably in C, right? Pardon? So BASIC. You started in BASIC on a PDP.
Yeah, PDP 11 running Ristus E.
Wow.
It was actually BASIC Plus. Which meant mostly that it had statement modifiers after the statement, so you could say do this while that or do this if that. And those actually snuck into Perl.
That's a little better than, yeah, I like that.
That's actually when I started noticing that, you could make a language that worked a little more like English, where the word order is more flexible than your typical computer language.
Right. Obfuscated C code contest, you won that twice. Do you remember your entries?
One of them turned your a keyboard into a Dvorak keyboard.
Is part of the idea that the judges look at it and they can't figure, they like try to figure it out, and can't?
Well, they just have to work hard at it. I mean, these are smart people too, so eventually they figure it out.
I'm sure they enjoy the challenge of it. Yeah. How do you have you ever judged that?
I've never judged it, no.
Let me see if I can find your code.
I'd probably be too mean.
The idea, though, is to write code that is as far as possible illegible, right?
Yeah.
Unreadable.
It helps. You have to know how to write readable code in order to know how to write unreadable code.
Right.
Arguably, over the years, Perl has made it a little easier to write unreadable code than strictly necessary.
That is one of the knocks you hear from people from time to time.
We get complaints with Perl 6 that we've sort of made it a little harder to write obfuscated code.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're optimizing for this time around. Trying to make different mistakes.
I think it's interesting that you and Gloria met and wanted to go on a mission. Are you still religious? Is that still a part of your life?
We still attend church regularly.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lovely church where people are very much interested in what really is the real core of faith. I'm not ashamed of Christ, but I am ashamed of a lot of Christians.
Yeah.
So it's a tough role to be in these days when it's kind of not the popular thing.
Right. Right.
But
especially
I feel
in technology, I imagine there's a lot.
Yes, there's a lot of antipathy towards the overreaches of a lot of people of faith, and obviously every faith has a lot of people who confuse their culture with the essence of what they believe.
Yeah.
And but I think of those as the trout living in the stream, and all the stuff coming by, and this lovely fly comes by, and you get a hook in the mouth, and people get a hook in the mouth, and they decide that all flies are inedible.
Right.
I think that basically the Christians tried to fight the culture wars, and that was a big mistake.
Right.
I personally do not expect people who are not Christians to act like Christians.
Right.
And I think that true faith is something that comes from the inside, comes from freedom of choice. It's not a cultural rah sort of thing.
You have to come to it. Yeah.
And so
it's probably armed you well in the religious wars over languages.
Well, yeah, sure.
There's a certain amount of religiosity in the technology, isn't there?
For sure.
Of the other kind you're talking about. Here's your obfuscated, one of the two obfuscated C entries. Very nicely done.
That's the Roman numeral calculator. All written in Roman numerals.
Oh, I love it. Oh. So that's part of it. It's not merely obfuscation. There's some humor there, right?
Sure, and it has to be multiple levels of obfuscation. This actually, the control flow in it, if I recall, is entirely by sending itself signals and trapping those signals, and that's how it does all its go-tos.
Did you always have a mind like this?
No, sometimes it was. It used to be a better mind. It's gone downhill. But no.
There's something. Did you always love puzzles?
I like puzzles. Yeah. I don't know if I'm actually all that smart. I'm probably not over 180 or so.
Well, that's pretty smart. We'll give you that. Gloria, what do you think? Pretty smart.
It's hard to measure.
There's different ways of smart.
I've always considered myself kind of about a 4 sigma event, but I don't really think that that's my fault. I got lucky. Good genetics, good upbringing, and with great with great power comes great responsibility.
But maybe even more important, you found your niche. You found your thing, right?
I when I wrote RN, when I wrote Patch, I eventually abandoned those. But this Perl thing is sort of created its own universe. There are two kinds of artists, if you will. There's the people like like Mahler and Gustav Mahler and J.R.R. Tolkien, who everything they think of ends up attaching back into their world, their main project. And then there's others who just do different things from time to time. And I started off being more like that, but then once Perl came about, I realized, yes, this was sort of my Middle Earth, my symphony of 1,000. And
your great work, your life work.
Well, my work anyway. It remains to be seen whether it'll be great.
It's not for you to judge that, I'm sure, but I think others have assigned it that Pearl of great price.
I've just been very fortunate that, I joke about being pretty smart, but I'm also stupid in some very useful ways. And the approach I use to language design, I call the bearer very little brain approach. And because there are ways in which I don't actually, I don't like abstractions that get in the way of getting my job done. So I like a language where if I want to do something fancy, it's there for me, but most of the time it's pretty concrete and stays out of my way. And I've just been very fortunate that the ways in which I like a simpler language, many other people like that too. And I just, it didn't start with Perl. It started with RN and Patch, and I just had discovered early on that if I like something, other people were likely to like it too.
So you kind of, as you're starting in this process, form a philosophy of coding, you think? Is that a fair?
Yeah, there's more than one way to do it. That's one way to express it. Easy things should be easy, hard things should be possible. A language should grow with you as you are. This is one of the ways in which computer languages, I feel, should be more like natural languages, because we don't expect a 5-year-old to speak with the same diction as a 50-year-old.
Right.
And we have many people in many walks of life who speak a different patois, or lingo, and so it's okay to have dialects. It's okay to not use the whole language. A lot of the computer languages, as I was growing up, there was this idea that everything had to be strictly orthogonal, as they use the term, which means all the variables are independent of each other in your programming. But the downside of that is you pretty much have to know the whole language before you can use it usefully. And natural languages have subsets that are useful. So we decided fairly early on in the development of Perl that we would not lose track of that. We would not turn it into a language where you had to have a PhD in order to start using it.
I appreciate that, actually,
But by the same token, we don't want to be a language that just limits you to that. So Perl 5, one thing we discovered was that you could have some fancy concepts like lexical scoping and closure functions over their lexical scope. We didn't actually have to tell people about that, because not everyone's ready to learn that when they start out. We said, well, you can have this anonymous subroutine that you can just have a reference to. And then later on they passed that into a place that's going to do a callback, and they refer to some lexical variable outside the scope, and lo and behold, it works right. At that point, they are ready to learn what lexical closure means.
Or works wrong.
Or works
they get
works
burned.
wrong if it's in the if it's in the wrong programming language. So it's not just the simple on-ramps, but it's also trying to steal the Promethean fire without getting burnt, and
I like that.
Bring it back to people who
when they're ready.
When they're ready. Perl 6 has taken this idea and extended it further. So in the areas of language extensibility, in terms of having a really nice meta-object protocol underneath the object system, in terms of some fairly highfalutin functional programming notions. They're there implicitly underneath, and it's a multi-paradigmatic language. That's a hard word to say. So we don't go whole hog in any one particular direction. We don't go to functional programming to the extent that it prevents you from using the other paradigms. Usually there's about a 90% that you can steal and get it into your language. Same with object-oriented or.
Perl's kind of a laissez-faire language, isn't it?
It is.
It's not strict. It's not.
Well, it doesn't start out
dogmatic.
Strict. What we've been moving to is a model that we call gradual typing. Way back in 2000, when we realized that the design of Perl 5 was showing its age already, and was reaching some limits.
What areas was it not serving?
Well, we weren't sure. We just sensed that we needed to break compatibility in some ways, and we decided right at the outset, which I think was a wise decision at the time, that we would break it in all the ways that that it needed to be broken.
Right.
And so we asked for suggestions. I expected, we had a call for RFCs, requests for comment, and I expected maybe 20 suggestions, and we got 361. And I go, oh boy. And so, and of course, each of these was, it kind of had.
Was the RFC specifically what's broken?
Well, they were saying, we said, if you wanted to fix one thing, and leave everything else the same, what would you fix?
Yeah, 361 things.
So, and of course, we looked at all these proposed solutions, and they were just, a complete mess.
Right.
But we said, because we couldn't do them all, they weren't coordinated with each other. So we said, well, okay, kind of ignore the solutions they proposed. What are the pain points? And one of the big ones that came out fairly early was that Perl 5 did not really have quite an adequate type system.
Yeah.
It's all very well if you present a beginner with a language that says, okay, you can use this, what we call a scalar, as either an integer or a number or a string, and it'll just kind of do what you expect.
Yeah.
It's okay if the user is confused, but it's not really okay if the computer is confused. And the design of Perl 5, this was an idea out of kind of linguistics, allomorphism, the fact that you can use something as one thing, it's in this category, but you can use it as that. I know this is a dog, that's a noun, but I can dog the dog catcher on the dog days of summer. There's many different ways you can adverb it.
And an adjective.
And you can, in natural language, you can pretty much use anything as anything almost. But
that could get you in big trouble in a computer
does.
program.
And the problem is once we had used it as the other way, then the computer was confused. Now in Perl 6, if you use a number as a string or vice versa, it remembers that it actually is fundamentally a number or a string. It's still one type internally. Right. And so it is actually internally much more strongly typed. It still feels like it's going with the flow, but because there is a real type system in there, and you can add more type information if you want even more specific types, that's where the gradual typing comes in. And we find that this has three benefits. The third most important benefit is what usually is espoused for strong typing, which is more type safety.
Right.
But that's a distant third place in Perl 6. Second place probably is, at least long term, is going to be for performance. The better typing you have, the better the more information the optimizer has, and it can turn unlimited integers into machine-specific integers and such.
Right.
The most important thing actually is what we call multiple dispatch. The extensibility of a language really depends on whether you can add new things to existing structures and get it to behave more the way you want it to. So historically in object-oriented programming, you've had a class and you derive a new class,
right.
and that's one way that they deal with this polymorphism. But the same idea comes in functional programming, where you can maybe have what we call this multiple dispatch, where based on, you write multiple different definitions, and they have signatures, type signatures. So maybe this version of it has an integer and a string, and that one has a floating point number and a string. And it picks the best one. And the thing is, because this is just built into the dispatch mechanism, you can pull in these modules that have these definitions and add more definitions of your own. And it's as if you had written a big switch statement, except that your typical switch statement, you have to have it all in one textual spot. You
right.
can't go out to somebody else's
right.
file and add more cases to it.
Right.
Whereas this, it allows you to add more cases either to the objects or to the functions, depending on which realm you're thinking in. So that's one way in which we provide for greater extensibility into the future. And that is probably the most important function of types in Perl 6.
It's really, I find it fascinating how, and I suppose this is true of all languages, but it's very clear in Perl, your personality, who you are, the language reflects that, doesn't it? It reflects your feelings and your philosophy. And I kind of like that because it becomes very personal and I don't want to say iconoclastic, but it's unique. And then I think if somebody who's using Perl finds that expressive because they get it, mm-hmm. they choose that language, and now they kind of get it. Do you feel a burden to kind of maintain that? I mean, that's part of your role as benevolent dictator. You have to approve any extensions, but it's even greater than that. It is Larry Wall's language in many respects. I know there are many people contributed to it, but
certainly, I would say that it has to be a balance.
Yeah.
Because
you don't want it homogenized though either.
There are many people who use Perl usefully for things that I'll either never be interested in or well, I probably would be eventually.
But I don't even mean that. It's not what they use it for. It's how it expresses itself.
At a deep level, yes.
Yeah.
But I do have to, as part of the design, say there are other people who have different learning styles,
right.
have different
right.
Programming styles, and we don't want to make it impossible.
You want to accommodate them as well.
Yeah. I mean, even if we don't make something easy, we don't want to make something impossible.
But you're not writing Ada. Yeah.
Ada has its advantages.
Well, but exactly. Yeah.
Well, and Ada is one of the languages that Perl has borrowed ideas from.
Right. Right.
One of my favorite ideas from Ada was if you want to do something unsafe, you're going to do something down here like unchecked type conversion. You have to say up at the top of the program with unsafe type conversion.
I know, I love that.
Unchecked type conversion, I guess.
I love that.
I love that too. So we actually borrowed that in the Perl area. For instance, we allow...
Here be dragons. Yeah. But at least we
we allow things like... in Ruby, they love to do their monkey patching. Mm-hmm. Okay, but that's really dangerous. Going out and modifying other people's classes is just a recipe for disaster, and magical action in a distance. So we said, yeah, you can do that, but you have to say. Use monkey typing. But we decided to call it monkey typing to go with duck typing, and it's also a lovely picture of millions of monkeys typing on it. So, but you have to declare up at the top. Use monkey typing.
Perl probably has more personality than any other language.
Sometimes we overdo it. One of our 50 design principles is you think that's cute today. So we used to have a lol operator, but
really?
Yeah.
That was
it was for lists.
That wore out
its
welcome.
I mean,
list of lists. No, that makes sense.
Everything always has more than one purpose. Yeah, but if humor can be one of them, sure.
Why not? We're talking to Larry Wall, the inventor of Perl, and having a great time. Your questions and comments in the chat room are welcome. There are lots of people very interested who have They want to know how you write decimals in Roman numerals, but we'll leave that for another day. Our show today brought to you by Wealthfront. Yesterday we were talking, I was having fun, we were talking about the stock market and how the game is rigged. Well, see, and I really think so as an individual. It's a very difficult thing to do, to play the stock market. And yet, if you're putting money aside for your future, for your retirement, for, a down payment on a home, for your nest egg, your rainy day fund, you can't just kind of let it sit there. You're not going to put it in your mattress. You do need to invest it. So how do you balance this? Well, you find somebody who really understands the game. Now, that could mean you go to a professional investor, and they're going to charge you a lot, like 1% to 3% of what you have under management every single year, not to mention fees that you don't even know about ahead of time for transactions and changes. That's going to eat away at any gains you get. I got a better idea for you, Wealthfront. Wealthfront makes it easy for anybody to access world-class, long-term, I want to emphasize that. This is not day trading, long-term investment management. You could start with a minimum of $500. So if you want to try it out, it's great. And this is going to cost you not 1%, 2%, 3% a year, 1/4% a year, with no commissions and no hidden fees. It's a computer doing the trading, but it's doing it with rules from some of the best investment minds in the world. People like Burton Malkiel, who wrote that Random Walk Down Wall Street, and Charles D. Ellis. These guys are masters at this, and they've taken their brains, their wisdom, their intelligence, and they've created software that does things that really no human manager can do, things like tax loss harvesting and direct indexing. You'd have to have a full-time investment advisor watching the market every hour of every day, paying attention to just your investments. That's what Wealthfront does. And by the way, no mystery here. It's transparent. It's very accessible. You can see all your accounts in one place, personal, joint, retirement. You will see every trade Wealthfront makes on your behalf in your dashboard. And they do such smart things. They're highly aware of the tax ramifications of everything they're doing. For instance, if you sell a stock, now I'm told this, if you sell a stock and within 30 days rebuy it, now you're going to play short-term capital gains, even if it was a long-term hold. They're clever enough to rebalance by keeping you, let's say, in the same category, but not buying the same stock. So they sell a share of Ford and they buy a share of GM. You don't have to worry about the tax consequences there, but you're going to stay in the category. That's a small example of smart stuff that they're doing on your behalf. It's not a surprise, really. Wealthfront has grown 20 times in the last 2 years. They now have $2.6 billion under investment. And I would love for you to just at least go and get your free personalized portfolio. You'll answer questions about your time frame, your risk aversion, stuff like that. Then they'll design a portfolio for you that you can just take with you for free. Wealthfront.com/triangulation. It'll give you an idea of how this works. And as I said, you can get started for as little as $500, and I think this is a really nice offer. They're going to manage your first $15,000, not for 1/4, 1% a year, but for nothing, forever. No fees at all. So this is a really great way for you to get an idea of what Wealthfront can do. I'm so impressed by Wealthfront and how they solve this challenge of how do you save, how do you invest, how do you make money without making it your full-time job. Well, it's this is Wealthfront's full-time job. You come first. Wealthfront.com/triangulation. Get your free portfolio right now and your first $15,000 management fee free. For compliance purposes, I have to tell you, Wealthfront Incorporated is an SEC-registered investment advisor. Brokerage services are offered through Wealthfront Brokerage Corporation, member FINRA and SIPC. This is not a solicitation to buy or sell securities. Investing in securities involves risks, and there is the possibility of losing money. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. Please visit wealthfront.com to read their full disclosure. Wealthfront.com/triangulation. Larry Wall is our guest. You could spend all day. You're just fun to talk to.
I try to give that impression.
Why did you decide to do a language? When you first decided to do Perl, what happened?
Well, that's not the first time I did a language.
Oh, okay. What was your first language?
I had written several compilers before that in parsers. The first couple of them were actually written in BASIC. I wrote a language.
It's something people do in computer science 101,
everyone,
right?
Everyone thinks they're a computer language designer.
Right. So everybody tries it.
I just happened to fall into a niche where I managed to convince people actually
it was worth it.
is a good one.
Do you remember that first language?
Well, the first language probably something I did for a class.
Right.
You know, like they wanted us to do a thing called PL0, and we did PL0.5. I actually did it with Gloria's brother.
How neat.
But the first real language I wrote was it was called jury-rigged all-purpose meta language, JAM for short.
JAM, I like it.
And it was one of these inside-out languages, kind of like PHP, where most of it is text, and then you have a few directives that like control how the text works. And it was we used it for various purposes at our computer center there at Seattle Pacific. And,
yeah. But this is pre-World Wide Web, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, Perl was pre-World Wide Web.
Right.
I had no clue that the web was going to happen to Perl. All I knew was I wanted a language that was going to be a good text processing language and a good glue language. I wanted to, well, perhaps incestuous is the wrong word, but I wanted to have interaction with all the different interfaces on my computer as a programmer and as a system administrator. So it was a glue language. It had good environment, variables, command line, databases.
And still does. It's a really great system in language.
And it's really sort of trying to be, in some sense, a humble language and get out of your way and say, you know, we are not the be-all and end-all of programming. We want you to be able to talk to other languages, to other systems, and you know, we'd rather, you know, be friendly with everything,
right?
Rather than be kind of an insular academic sort of language. And so that's where Perl 5 came out in, you know, the early 90s.
What happened to Perl 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Well, they
were around.
There are still, you know, some Perl 4 programs out there that are still being used because we kept backward compatibility pretty well.
Right.
You know, the things I did at JPL in Perl were all in Perl 4.
Interesting.
But when Perl 5 came out, we started figuring out this extensibility thing, and I had begun to realize there's no way I could stay in charge of everything and keep everything in my head. I had to find ways of delegating, and so we got the extension mechanism, the module system, and this idea that we could be a glue language, and that is what, when the web came along, the web is HTML, which is text,
right,
and it is glue, which is a bunch of back-end databases that you want to project up there.
It's
so it was in the right place.
Very natural.
It was in the right place at the right time for that. And people ask me sometimes, what's going to be the killer app for Perl 6? I haven't a clue.
Right.
All I can do is say, you know, we're going to design it with these various principles, and even if we don't get all the way to this place, let's look at getting to the next step next to it so that someone else can take it that next step if they need to. So it's a very much a by feel thing.
Still used heavily as a
one of the best compliments I ever got was from Tim O'Reilly, just up the road here. And he said, you know, I don't know what Larry is thinking with Perl 6, but he can see around corners. So I've been trying to see around corners.
That's great.
For the last 15 years.
That's really great.
And,
I
hope I don't end up with a coroner.
I have your book that Tim published, Programming Perl, on my bookshelf, along with Randall's Learning Perl, and all the. It is unique. I mean, it's not like any other language. I mean, a lot of languages you say, oh, well, it's very C-like, you know, JavaScript and even Ruby and Python. You could say, well, I could see the C in it. What languages influenced you when you were first thinking about Perl? Well, or were you really just saying, I wanted something sui generis? I just want to do something.
Well, obviously, C. We borrowed the C precedence table almost whole cloth. There were bits of you know, awk and shell and
because it was
Ada and various other languages.
And you felt it was free to kind of pick and choose and
well, sure. That's you know, you have to be a little bit arrogant to be a computer language designer. To think you know better than all these people that came before you.
Yeah.
But yeah, the more things you try to mix in, the more you realize, oh boy, there's a lot of decisions and a lot of different ways people could decide these things.
Yeah, and of course you were influenced by grep, but the regular expression in Perl is so powerful and so great.
What we had to do at the beginning was we borrowed all these ideas, such as regular expressions, from the Unix culture. And they were already kind of messy to begin with, and we only made them messier. So one of our mandates with Perl 6 was not just to fix the boo-boos we did in the design of Perl 5, but to look at these places where we borrowed cruft from outside and to redesign those things. So regular expressions are completely redesigned. That's probably one of the most radical parts of the redesign.
And yet
so
the best,
it's funny. It's funny that just at the point where other languages are, borrowing Perl regular expressions and bragging about it, we're saying,
no, we're going to do it over.
Dame us.
Yeah, which probably is one of the reasons there was so much consternation, I think, about Perl 6. I mean, if you spend a lot of time learning Perl's regular expression, you don't want to start over, right?
Yeah, but it's all surface syntax that people get attached to. And,
yes, they do get attached.
When they see that there's ways to map things across and then see that the new way is clearer and less ambiguous and yet more powerful, then they...
Sorry about that fly.
That's okay.
We have one fly in the studio. I don't know where it came from.
I like to think that I'm attractive.
Okay, I'm not going there.
Well, hey, I finally grew my hair out after all these.
I like it. Look at that.
It's the first time I've ever had it this long.
You can have a man bun.
Yeah, I could.
Yeah, Gloria says no.
No.
No. Were you influenced at all by the functional languages, by Lisp and Smalltalk? Was there...
Well, sure. In fact, I noticed a question on here that many object-oriented systems have cruddy class hierarchies.
Yeah.
And that's actually one thing that we've borrowed from Smalltalk. For instance, they have a concept called traits, which are ways of mixing in what they call traits. Instead of doing by inheritance, it does it at compile time, and if there's collisions in your methods, it actually lets you know at compile time so you can fix it, rather than with the usual inheritance or mix-ins, you just get silent misbehavior.
Yeah, or runtime crashes.
So we borrowed that idea from Smalltalk, but we improved it. It's not just for those compile time mixed-togethers, composition, we say, but it also turned into our method for doing generic programming. So you have generic, we call them roles instead of traits because we extended them. But a class can fulfill multiple roles, like an actor is somebody off stage and they're doing a role, or maybe multiple roles in some place.
Yeah.
So that fixes a lot of the problem with these deep type hierarchies that you get in many systems. And we still use inheritance some where it makes sense, but we don't have to. It's a way of getting better compile time control of how you build your program.
Right.
And it may be that the killer feature of Perl in the future is actually in the self-referential, the program itself understanding how it is constructing itself. The Perl 6 compiler is actually written in Perl 6. The parser is in Perl 6. Much of the runtime is in Perl 6. So it's deeply aware of how it's going about things. And so we have like the most extensible language ever, we'd like to think. And yet we try to discourage people from extending it by providing so many built-in right ways to do things that people aren't tempted to overuse the extensibility. So hopefully, as we go into the future, the community can both avoid stagnation, but at the same time be ready to actually mutate the language at a reasonable pace without the danger of an explosion, like, the problem with Forth. It had this lovely small kernel that was very extensible, and everyone extended it in a different direction.
Well, in fact, some languages tout that capability, right? That
they do.
The macro extension.
And on some level, we do in Perl 6 too. Yeah. We like to say that you know, all computer languages are just dialects of Perl 6 because you can easily change the parser, and we already have parsers for other computer languages.
So Perl 5 came out in 1995. Lots changed, obviously. Not only the advent of the World Wide Web, but Unicode comes along. Concurrency starts to become very important. There are a lot of new issues. What was it that stimulated? You kind of touched on this, but more concrete. What made you say, okay, we got to do 6?
Well,
I mean, besides the 361.
Yeah, before that we were actually at a conference, and someone who was sort of very foresightful, John Orwant, realized that you know, things were kind of going haywire and that we were stagnating, and he got our attention by throwing some mugs in a conference room, very intentionally. I mean, it was the most well-controlled temper tantrum you've ever seen.
It's like a Zen master.
He said,
just slapped you.
We have to do something, or we're screwed. You know.
Wow. What was it specifically that he was worried about?
He didn't have a particular thing. He said, you got to do something different.
Yeah.
You got to do something exciting. And you know, about 5 minutes after that, the notion that it was time to break things and to break everything that needed breaking.
I love that.
And to embrace the second system syndrome. One of our slogans is "Second System Syndrome Done Right." So
it's often the case, though, that
well, it is, but you know, sometimes people don't have the courage to break every.
Right.
You know, Python did the Python 2 to Python 3 thing, and they broke a few things.
It was incremental more. Yeah.
Yeah, and I felt that was a mistake.
Yeah.
And you know, in retrospect,
controversial. I mean, you face a lot of heat.
They're still having trouble, you know, getting people to get away. And we're fine with people continuing to use Perl 5.
5's going to continue.
It's a very stable base. You know, you can't kill a language,
right?
Like that. Even though Perl 6 is just a sister language, is a different language.
Think of it as a different language.
Yeah, it's a different language. It's a related language. It's definitely the same family, same underlying principles.
You're going to write a new camel book for Perl 6?
Well, it might be a butterfly book.
The metamorphosis has occurred.
Well, nowadays we think of the camel as a larval form of the butterfly. If you go to the perl6.org website, you'll see the butterfly mascot.
I like that.
I wanted the metamorphosis idea. I also wanted the language to be appealing to 7-year-old girls. And that's a down payment on it.
Did you actually say that out loud?
Yes, I did. I said it more than once.
I think you're right, though, right?
I don't want that to sound creepy or anything.
Well, in conjunction with the butterfly, maybe, but no, I understand what you're saying. If we're going to go forward in technology, we've got to make it accessible for young people of all all genders and races and creeds, and I think that's a really interesting goal. It's not the first thing I would think of when I think of Perl. The language for 7-year-olds.
Well, you know, yeah, it's cultural things have been important to us over the years.
I like that.
Because of my background in linguistics and because of our experience, we've found that the community really is as important to the success of the language.
Absolutely. You look at CPAN and the Perl monks. I mean, it's been an amazing community around
Your community
Perl.
can fix your language. Your language cannot fix your community.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's really, in fact, if people choose Perl often, I think when I look at a language, I always look at the community around it first. What's available. And when you look at CPAN, that is an incredible resource.
But, you know, to me, you look at the Perl programming community, and I think it is the funnest, the most joyful community. And
that's
yet,
a good thing, because you have to live in it.
without, you know, without compromising the productiveness and the seriousness which we actually take the task of you know, getting our jobs done.
Yeah, it's appropriate to be both.
We don't believe in either or.
Yeah, it's appropriate to be both. Why don't you take a break? And I want to talk now. Let's focus on Perl 6 and we only have a few more minutes. But I know that's really, this is the big celebration, Christmas.
Yeah.
It's coming, baby, and we want to talk a little bit about it. Our show today brought to you by a company I just have to laud, I have to praise, I have to pat them on the back. Epson, and this must have been, as a corporate decision, a tough one. Decided, you know what, we're going to do better by our customers. We're going to make the Epson EcoTank printers that come in the box with 2 years of ink. If you look at the ET4550, which is kind of nice, small office or home printer, this is the one I'm going to get. Comes with 11,000 black pages of ink in the box. That's about 50 ink cartridge sets, 8,500 color pages, about 2 years of ink. And then, when you need to get more ink, it comes with ultra-low-cost replacement ink bottles. They have completely upended the printer market. They've always been making the best printers. I mean, I love Epson printers. Their new precision core technology, which they brought from their industrial side, 40 million drops of ink a second. I have a precision core printer at home that prints 3 seconds a page, just and it's done. It's amazing. But now you add to that the EcoTank, you're getting everything in a printer that you could possibly want. An all-in-one printer, does scanning, does faxing. I don't do any faxing, but if I had to, I could. I use it all the time. It scans to the cloud. It will print from your mobile device, with Apple's AirPrint or Google Cloud Print. It does, and because it's inkjet, there's no startup time, no warm-up, high speed. The colors are gorgeous. You print photos with it, laser quality black text. I mean, really beautiful text. Auto two-sided printing. You get a 30-page auto document feeder that actually works. I mean, I use it all the time. And I just love my Epson printers. And now with the EcoTank, but there's more to love. Visit epson.com/EcoTank and find out about the EcoTank printers. They have a variety, all of the Precision Core printers, from the big one. See that Big Daddy over there? I think it's like 20,000 pages of ink in the big guy. That's amazing. Epson. So keep going down a little bit. I'm looking at but the very bottom. There it is. The WFR 4640. 20,000 pages of ink in the box. And when you put in the new ink on those, they have these ink bags. I mean, it's incredible. 70% lower total printing costs. The cost of consumables plummets. This is 20 pages per minute, this printer. Incredible. And it looks great, and it works great, and you're going to love it. And by the way, very quiet. Epson.com/EcoTank. Not only the best printers out there, they come with the ink. Larry Wall is our guest. Perl 6.
I think our butterfly would look good on that printer.
It would look gorgeous. I didn't know she has a name. She's Camellia.
Camellia, yes.
Camellia the butterfly.
Yeah, you notice there's a camel in that.
Oh, wow. Of course, Larry.
Yeah.
Of course.
and she actually has about a 3-meter wingspan.
Oh, she's bigger than that. Yeah. You actually, wow.
Well, if her larval form was a camel.
Would you, if somebody's coming to Perl for the first time, would you say start with Perl 6, yeah? Even now? In beta?
It depends on what you're going to do. If you need a large corpus of existing technology, then Perl 5 is still the thing for you.
So CPAN, I presume there'll be a CPAN for Perl 6?
Well, we will be putting Perl 6 stuff on CPAN, as well as exploring other ways of generalizing it, so it doesn't really matter where you get your...
Interesting.
We'd like to be as good as CPAN and better.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because that's one of the treasures, of course, of the Perl community.
It's a treasure in the Theodore Sturgeon sense that 90% of everything is crud. But
don't tell that to people.
Oh, well,
see, I'm sorry, folks.
Everybody is subject to that.
But there's some jewels in there. All right,
sure.
There's a pony in there somewhere. If I, as a Perl programmer coming from Perl 5, and I know I was mentioning before the show that all of my Perl programming was with Mod Perl. On my server, I was doing CGI stuff. And I did I loved the grep so much, the regular expression parsing so much, that I used it all the time for text processing. I didn't use grep, I'd use Perl, because it just worked so nicely, and it was so easy to do one-liners and just get the job done. Will I feel at home in Perl 6?
I think so. Star and the plus and the question mark still work the same.
Okay, good.
But white space is not now. There's no extended mode. It's all extended.
Okay.
In the sense that
so you don't get used to that.
And the switches come in front, so you don't have to like get to the end and see, oh, there's a /S/M/X. Now I have to go back and rethink.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. You know, this.
That's a semantic flow. Yeah.
It's this one-pass parsing.
Yeah.
Is very important to us now.
It's good for your compiler as well as for the
It's
human.
how we manage the extensibility, because we see a program not as a single language. It's every time you make a new declaration, whether it's simply a new function or adding new operators, it's a different language in that scope. So we always want to know exactly what language we are in at every point. And
how do you balance the needs of humans versus the needs of the parser, the compiler, the interpreter? It's tough.
It is.
You don't want to favor the interpreter over everything else, though.
I mean, on some level, you know, we think to ourselves, you know, we're actually doing this rather poorly. It's just better than, you know, it's like democracy.
It's the best of all possible poor choices.
So.
But it's something you keep in mind, obviously, something you're always thinking about. Do you think about Perl all the time? Is that like?
I think about it a lot of the time, not all the time. I don't think about it when I'm kissing my wife.
Gloria's happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Although I bet she's not sure sometimes.
I definitely have to have some activities that drive Perl out of my mind.
Yeah. Like what?
I'm the only person who you know, is sort of not allowed to burn out.
Right. Right. And that's a challenge.
So over the last 15 years, I've had to adopt some things.
Have there been times when you've said, I just don't want to do this anymore?
Well, if I feel that way, then what I usually do these days, I have fallen in love with Chinese characters.
Yeah.
I originally started teaching myself Japanese to prove that an old person can learn Japanese, and I probably proved the opposite. And then over the course of learning the Japanese characters, and learning to love Unicode.
Is gorgeous.
With the Unicode, there's you know, thousands upon thousands of characters.
Yeah.
And I look at one of these characters and I say, I can't, you know, figure out what the pieces are. So I decided to go in and start naming not just the official radicals, but all of the repeating elements. And it turns out if you go into the base plane of Unicode and repeat everything that repeats 5 times or so, you give it a name, there's about 3,000 different names. I know because I did that. Yeah. I named them all. And if you go into the extensions, you know, tens of thousands of more characters, there are probably another 3,000 repeating elements that can be named. And I've got most of them named. When I'm actually going in and changing my database of characters, you know, that drives out Perl rather nicely.
Yeah.
So.
What happened to Parrot?
Parrot is one of our projects that, you know, sometimes you intend to build a prototype and throw it away, and sometimes you didn't intend to build a prototype and have to throw it away anyway. It was at the beginning, Parrot and Perl 6 were the same project.
Right.
And then there came a point when, you know, the people who were concentrating on Parrot said, well, you know, our vision is a VM that will run all dynamic languages. And Perl 6 goal was more a language that will run on many backends. You know, we were kind of tired of being a C-only language.
Right.
So while we started off kind of digging a tunnel from the opposite ends of the mountain, you know, the visions kind of diverged, and they felt that they had to, you know, kind of de-emphasize Perl in order to attract other languages, but they ended up de-emphasizing Perl and not really attracting anybody else. So kind of the project visions diverged, and there became this, it just became tough slogging to try to bridge that impedance mismatch between the projects.
Right.
And so at some point the Rakudo developers and the engineers felt that Rakudo is the leading Perl 6 compiler right now.
And it's a compiler, not a interpreter? Or?
Oh, it's all of those.
It's all of those.
Okay. It's one of these fancy, tall stack interpreter, but it does type specialization, jitting, and so currently we run on a new VM called More VM, which is meta objects on a runtime.
Right.
So it's fundamentally built on top of a meta object protocol, and that's sort of our native platform. It also runs on JVM, and what we're promising for Christmas is just the More VM backend. Mm-hmm. But the JVM has been tracking pretty well because they have a pretty strong. The JVM is, has been developed for a long time, and they have a pretty strong.
Is anybody doing LLVM before?
It's been considered, but the problem with LLVM, it's a little too LL. You really have to reinvent a lot of the runtime.
Low level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it may happen someday, but it has not been a big target for us.
Yeah.
We have in progress a backend on JavaScript that is partly bootstrapped up, so it should be coming sometime in the next year. Yeah, we really didn't want to get stuck in the single VM or single ecosystem like Perl 5 did. That was one of the mandates of.
Well, and you look at the success of Java. Part of the success of Java is the variability of the VMs and the places it can run. And
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you
and JavaScript in a different
JavaScript as well,
different set of ecological.
So if I go to perl6.org right now, it's great. There's Get Started. There's Download Rakudo. That's probably the place to start. Is Download Rakudo, and that's Windows.
Windows, Linux.
You have a Mac
OS.
Solution yet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that would be the easiest way to just kind of play with it. Is there a REPL for Perl or a way to?
Yes, there's a REPL. It's a little bit chewing gum and baling wire. That's one of the things we'll probably.
That's one thing I think for kids. That was why BASIC I think became so popular.
Yeah.
Is the ability to execute the code right there on the screen and see what happens.
We have some ideas about how to improve our REPL, but we do have one. If you get on the IRC channel, you can type at the bot and have execute things right there in front of everybody.
That's nice.
And a lot of our debugging is, you just paste something in there that you think is this wrong,
see what
right,
happens.
or wrong.
But that's why a REPL is so great, right?
If you want to file a bug report, it's just simple cut and paste, send it to rakudobug.org, perl.org.
Right. What does your coding environment look like? What do you use?
I use Linux Mint, Vim.
And Vim, okay.
Yeah. I mean, not really. I don't use all the features of it, but it has some pretty good highlighting.
Yeah.
I started. I don't want to start a religious war here. I started off in Emacs, but my pinky got tired. So.
Mapping the caps lock key to control really helps.
I do that, except they moved my caps lock key.
I know.
I have a new Lenovo with a really crazy keyboard.
I know.
Like,
I don't think they think about programmers anymore when they make these keyboards.
Until these down here.
What? Really?
Yeah.
See, that's not good because your muscle memory, it's up there. It's up there.
No, control should be right there.
Yeah.
Well, and there.
Yeah, right, both. That way you don't wear out the pinky. Okay, I'm very excited. It's been a long. Why did it take so long? For 15 years.
Well, the old saying, "Good, fast, cheap. Pick two."
Right.
We're an open source project, and a bunch of volunteers, so it has to be cheap.
Yeah.
Therefore, it reduces down to good or fast. Pick one.
Right. And you wanted it to be good.
We wanted it to be good because we were very fortunate, really, that Perl 5, which is such a stable base, well loved,
solid,
well maintained.
Yeah.
Kind of locked into its current thing, to their current backward compatibility thing. So, because we had that stable base, we could take the risk of doing a long-term second system syndrome done right. And
it's nice, isn't it?
It is. It's nice to have that luxury. Companies don't have that. They have a burn rate to have to worry about.
Right.
And we said, we're just going to stretch it out, and all we're going to do is, our design is not a waterfall model, it's what we call a whirlpool. All we have to do is make sure it keeps converging.
I like that.
As long as it's always still converging, and it doesn't matter if there are projects along the way that we try things, and they don't quite work out.
Yeah.
Like not just Parrot and Pugs. We have another one called Nietzsche that was on .NET. It's a good proof of concept, and we've learned lots of things from all of these. Kind of it's sort of a flooding algorithm and see where it goes. But as long as the flood kind of converges onto where we eventually want to be, that's the middle of the whirlpool.
Right.
So that's been my main job. I feel like that's my main job over the last 15 years. Just keep things just sort of edging closer to a solution.
So you're more the general than the foot soldier. Do you get to code at all anymore? Or?
Well, it's actually quite the opposite. The first number of years, the first 10 years ago so of the Perl 6 effort, they said, we know how you code. We think we can do better.
No.
Please stay away.
How rude.
No.
How rude.
If you look up, in the Hackers Dictionary, if you look up Joe code, I think my RN code was used as an example of that.
Oh, that's funny.
But and it was funny to watch them make all the same mistakes I did when they were doing some of this stuff. But we've had some very good architects, Jonathan Worthington, Patrick Michaud on the More VM and the intermediate layers. So now that there's a really good architecture, they kind of let me in the door the last few years, and I have a lot of fun actually hacking on bits and pieces of it. Mostly I try to, I leave the big refactors to them mostly, but there's a set of issues where I look at them and I say, if I don't do that, nobody else is going to do it, and I just can't stand to not have that work the way I want it to before Christmas. So we've mostly between the first beta and we'll have another beta in November, the real thing. Mostly we're just looking at the bugs that look like features that might trap people into us having to be bug compatible in the future. So we're doing a little bit with optimization, but we still have a lot of headroom to optimize after that. We can do a lot of optimization after that. Maybe we'll get a little, the way Java started off, it was really, really slow.
Right.
And then it got faster over time.
Right.
We have kind of a...
But you already have a JIT and all that.
We have a JIT. It's not a really great JIT. We have another JIT in process that may or may not hit before Christmas. But it doesn't really matter because, in theory, the JIT is not going to change the definition of the language. What we're really trying to nail down at Christmas is what is the first version of the language.
This is the language.
What's C89 or something.
Right.
We hope to rev the definition of the language maybe a little more often than C or C++ do. But
it is a finished language as of Christmas.
We want to stabilize the actual definition of the language. It is defined by a test suite.
Yep.
And if it's tested in that test suite, you should be able to rely on that going forward.
Good.
If it's not, you're taking a gamble.
Right.
And there's still plenty of corners where we probably would need twice as many tests as we do have.
Right.
But that will come over time. It's still a very young language.
It really is
be
in the scheme of things, isn't it?
We plan for it to be around a good long time.
Good.
We don't know that it will be around 100 years from now, but Paul Graham wrote this essay called The 100-Year Language, and we kind of took that to heart and said, okay, what would it take to have a language that would still be useful in 100 years?
Wow, that's quite a challenge.
And to be honest, all we can really see is 10 or 15 or 20 years out.
Right.
And maybe we're fooling ourselves even about that. Maybe we'll hit the the singularity. I think the singularity is going to be more like a plurality, but and maybe computers will do all our.
We won't have to code anymore.
Maybe we won't, but maybe the computers will want to program in Perl 6. I don't know.
If a computer wanted to program in Perl 6, I'd encourage it to do so. I figured they'll do machine language, but who knows, I'd love another hour with you to talk about the future in that regard, because that's fascinating stuff too. Do you concern yourself about that, or you got enough on your plate with Perl?
Well, my head's already swelled enough. I don't need to persuade myself I know the future.
Okay. Well, is there a corporate sponsor for Perl? Like, many languages, of course, have a company kind of behind
there are a
the
number
scenes.
there are a number of companies that have contributed greatly. O'Reilly has O'Reilly Media. Tim
Absolutely,
O'Reilly's,
absolutely.
has certainly, especially in the first years when we were doing a lot of design meetings, a lot of conference sponsorship. I'm currently sponsored by Craigslist.
Oh, great.
They've
Are they in Perl?
They're one of the number of companies
That's
that
great.
are heavily invested in Perl, and they've supported me for the last 2 years. I'm their artist in residence.
Thanks, Craig.
Except for the artist, yeah, thank you. I couldn't have really got here without that. I'm very grateful.
Yeah.
And a number of other companies. But
unlike a lot of languages, it's not
open source. So really,
Yeah.
most of the support, it's really hard for a company to donate to a project. They can sponsor conferences. They can sponsor people's travel.
Right.
Most of the donations is actually employee hours.
Yeah. But that's useful.
Whether it's just a 1 day a week,
Right.
your 20% time at a place like Google, or more extensive, or 100% like Craigslist
Right.
does for me. That's a lot easier to for a company to donate hours.
Right.
Especially if there's the symbiotic relationship between what the company is doing and what the community is doing. And this is the great thing about the whole open source movement. When I started off, you couldn't make the business case for open source.
Right.
And now it's obvious to a lot of companies that, this is not our core competency, but we use this, we're invested in this, and the community around this is worth interacting with
Right.
and worth supporting.
Good.
And I'm very, very happy to have been in on the founding of the open source movement.
Awesome.
I think, in some ways, a lot of people still think that the patch program was more useful to humanity than Perl was.
I would disagree. Although patch is probably still widely used, I would imagine.
Well, now that we have things like Git,
Right.
that's starting to
Right.
encompass a lot of what patch was initially useful for. So I don't mind that. It's all technology becomes strata eventually, geological strata that maybe the archaeologists will
Right.
dig up and maybe they won't.
Where can we follow you on Twitter? Where do you? Is there anywhere we can see what Larry Wall's up to?
I mostly hang out on the Perl 6 IRC channel
There
on
you go.
Freenode.
All right.
I was tweeting a lot up until the last election, and my son called me out for being too political.
What does your son do?
My younger son, he's the hacker of the family.
Nice.
He's graduated from college and is going to be looking for a job next year.
In computer science?
Yeah, he's my one computer scientist. On the other side, I should say, Craigslist is hiring. I don't know that that's going to work together there. We have 4 kids. Girl, boy. My 2 daughters are both married. I have 3 grandkids.
That's great.
Well,
you're young to have grandkids. Wow.
My
That's
older
great.
son is in his second postdoc at Princeton Institute for Advanced Studies.
Oh, is he a physicist or?
Yeah, he's doing black hole thermodynamics, the
Fascinating.
the Stephen Hawking stuff.
Right.
And he's doing it at the place where Einstein was. So we're
That's pretty cool.
we're proud of all of our kids.
That's great.
One
out of 4 ain't bad if
He's
all
probably
of you.
the most academic of them.
Yeah, sounds like
but
a bright
yeah,
guy.
we like all our kids. They're all
That's
super.
nice. That's nice. Hey, it's
we were very
such a
fortunate.
pleasure to see you. I was going to say meet you, but although both of us only dimly remember it, we did meet at the Screensavers many years ago.
Yes.
It's great to see you again and to meet Gloria. And I'm so excited about Perl 6. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
We're excited too.
It's great news, and I'm downloading Rakudo right now. We do a triangulation. Larry Wall, everybody. Yay. Everybody. Yay. We're not worthy. We do we do triangulation.
It finally happened to my mom.
What?
In a beauty salon. She got Your Larry Walls.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's fantastic. She must have been thrilled.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been telling everybody, I don't know what you do, but I tell them that he does something. It's Perl. I don't know. We do Triangulation every Monday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 1900 now UTC at twit.tv. Please watch live. Participate in our chat room at irc.twit.tv. But if you can't, don't worry. Don't worry. We make on-demand audio and video available after the fact here at twit.tv/TRI on our website, but also wherever you get your podcasts. And I know this is one a lot of people are going to be watching with great interest as we get closer to the final first release of Perl 6. Is that right? The final first release?
Call it anything you like. Just call it.
Thanks for joining us, Larry, and thank you for being here. We'll see you next time on Triangulation. Oh, that was so much fun.